Doctors of Reddit, what's the biggest case of faking it you've ever seen? Taking trauma call during surgery residency, had a prisoner come in after a fight and claimed he couldn't move or feel his legs. All the CT scans and MRIs were normal, but we would shield his legs so he couldn't see them and poke them with needles and other sharp objects with enough force to cause pain. He never flinched or moved his legs at all. He was diagnosed with skewora, spinal cord injury without radiographic abnormality. He stayed in the hospital for a week, no improvement. Always had one guard with him. One night they were down in the lobby watching some television, but the guard needed to use the restroom. The patient said, "Where could I possibly go? I'm paralysed." Guard left him alone for 2 minutes. Patient last seen sprinting down the road, naked butt cheeks flapping in the breeze. Made it to a city 4 hours away by car before he was caught again. I have never seen anyone fake it so well. Truly playing the long con. That is insane. Dermatologist here. Patient was convinced she had a melanoma and needed a biopsy and would need to be on workers' comp. I told her it looked like ink from a marker. She demanded a biopsy. I wiped the area off with an alcohol swab and showed her the ink and that there was no spot on her skin anymore. She stormed out, threatening to sue. I'm just glad I cured her melanoma. Had a patient come in for a fall who now couldn't move their legs at all. Did a bunch of tests, didn't find anything. The patient was not at all fazed by suddenly being paralysed, which was the first red flag. Didn't really believe anything was wrong, but the patient was still not moving their legs. My options are to admit for a huge workup or get them to walk. So I update them saying everything is fine, tests are negative, you can go home. Patient gets up, gets dressed and walks out without a word. Jesus didn't miss leg fixing day. Not a doctor, but worked in healthcare for nearly 20 years. While taking a break from the ICU, due to it being emotionally draining, I worked in home health for a bit. I had a patient who clearly had Munchausen syndrome. On a daily basis, she would call her insurance to see what things would be covered if she was diagnosed with this or that. She called her doctor's office an average of 5 times during my shift with her. She would report all kinds of non-real symptoms. She pestered the doctors into doing exploitive laparoscopic surgery. Of course, nothing was found. One day I walked in and she was rubbing her incisions with rotten cabbage, trying to get it infected. She wasn't seeking pain meds except to sell. Really, she was just as happy with antibiotics or stool softeners, anything, as long as they wrote her a prescription and she got to go to the pharmacy where she did a whole song and dance for them too, claiming allergies and reactions. She always increased the exaggeration of her story too. One time she fluttered her eyes after making sure I was looking and said she lost consciousness in that half a second. She called the doctor and claimed she lost consciousness for 5 minutes. She called the insurance and claimed it was 10 minutes. She called the pharmacy and claimed it was 30 minutes. Then she called 911 and told them she woke up on the floor after losing consciousness for 4 hours. The worst thing about her was that she was a mom. Her son was 28 at the time, and by all the stories of his childhood illnesses and all her saying how he is severely disabled, I knew she basically fucked up his childhood with Munchausen by proxy. She portrayed him as being severely disabled, and that's why he would never find a wife. I met him, he was healthy and of average intelligence. He wasn't looking for a wife, he was gay, but she refused to accept that. Working with her was so miserable that I took a couple years off from any and all healthcare after that. We had a patient faking a seizure, so my supervisor told one of us to get the brain needle. The patient made a miraculous and swift recovery without intervention. That's the best part about most of these stories, when they make up some form of fake medicine so the patient stops faking. Cracks me up every time. Young, 18 to 20, woman running into small rural hospital ER pretending to have abdominal pain. Police officer had tagged her going 40 plus kilometers over the limit, which was stunt driving, as per the new law in Ontario, impound and license suspicion automatic. Cop followed her into ER and apparently said he'd be waiting for her when she left. Locum staff such as myself were housed at a small B&B about 15 minutes away, and the ER had pre-printed order sets to be done before we arrived. When I arrived, she flat out admitted that she just came in because she freaked out and didn't stop. I told her we'd give her 45 minutes to call her parents, family before I booted her, except BHCG came back positive and subsequent ultrasound came back showing extremely early ectopic. Officer figures out something is up when he hears air ambulance call come in over radio. She was completely asymptomatic and just worked out that she dodged both charges and a life-threatening issue by accident. It was definitely a what the moment. Physical therapist here. Working mom comes into the clinic with her infant in a stroller. She's limping like she's got a nail in her foot, wincing in pain and tears in her eyes. She's crying during her visit with the PT. None of us think she's faking it. She limped out of the clinic. I glanced out of the window and saw this woman bounding down the sidewalk, hips swaying, full stride, going places. We were all fools. To what end did she fake an injury? Sympathy? You guys don't prescribe, right? No, but the money would be on trying for some 7-figure lawsuit payout, which involves playing the long game. My brother was an EMT for 2 years and he told me this: people will try to use the ambulance as a means for transportation from Fulton to Oswego because the hospital is in Oswego by faking seizures. Sometimes when the head EMT guy was feeling fun and knew that the person was faking, he'd say something like, "Man, it's weird that he's having seizures but not peeing himself." Apparently the person would kind of snap out of it for a second, weigh up the repercussions, then either pee themselves or stop faking. I thought that was hilarious. We had a family calling for a Medicab, a cab paid for by income-based insurance, from somewhere out in the sticks to our ER in a college town every few weeks or so. The mom would be seen for some ailment or the other, and the rest of the family would go to Walmart, go to the mall, do all their in-town errands. She was basically faking an emergency illness every few weeks so they wouldn't have to pay for a cab to get their shopping done. Sorta along the same idea. Working at a pharmacy, we saw a guy come in to try and get a refill on some pain meds that had no refill. After pleading that his ear really hurt, we told him again we couldn't refill it. One of the other employees saw him step into a side hallway and take a pencil and jam it forcibly into his ear repeatedly, drawing blood. He calmly left and went to the ER. He came back a few hours later with a prescription for pain meds. Oh, what? Pediatric neuropsychologist. Got a referral for more or less consolidation care. Patient was 13, wheelchair bound, required therapeutic oxygen, seizures, arthritis, musculoskeletal problems, suspected autism, completely nonverbal, severe behavior challenges, the list goes on. He was being followed by at least 8 different specialties. Clearly none of them were communicating with each other, and the med list was about 18 prescriptions long, including some incredibly heavy duty stuff. Opioids, antipsychotics, anti-epileptics, that sort of stuff. Got kicked to me after his upteenth ER trip because the ER doctor felt something was off and he needed someone to look at the whole picture. Fictitious disorder by caregiver or Munchausen by proxy. All of the original symptoms were parent reported, going back to about a year old. It had possibly started with a febrile seizure, fever-induced seizure in infancy, but this was never witnessed by anyone but mom, so it's unclear. She has been telling docs different things. She was convinced her son had all 3 disorders, told him he was going to die any day. He got a Make-A-Wish trip, donations, etc. He was removed from her custody and taken off most of his meds. Within a few weeks he was out of the wheelchair, playing basketball, no oxygen, super talkative and friendly, no behaviour problems. He did have a pretty significant intellectual disability, but there's no way to say if that was organic or the result of the prescription cocktail he had been fed all his life. Hopefully, with some good therapy and a stable home, he can continue to make progress. Whenever we had kids, usually teenagers, playing up their symptoms to extend their hospital stay, we would order them into a healthy lifestyle. Lights out at 9, no screen time for 2 hours before bedtime, healthy diet chock full of fruits and vegetables, screen time limits, minimum number of laps around the unit per day to get in their exercise. They got better so much faster with our healthy lifestyle tips. The patient comes in for back pain with weakness of the legs, gets a full workup with MRI, standard blood work, and then some immunological things to look for, stuff like myasthenia gravis. No neurological or immunological explanation for the weakness. Patient is seen by physical therapy, and they are of the opinion that the patient is holding back intentionally. Go to see the patient at the end of the day and prep them for discharge. Patient is infuriated that they're being discharged, yelling and screaming about how they aren't better, how they're disappointed in the institution, blah blah blah. They said one particular thing that still clearly stands out 3 to 4 years later. "I can't believe you're sending me home already. I haven't even told my family I'm here, and now you're going to send me home before they even have a chance to see me." My attending and I leave the room to arrange things with the nurses. We go back in and the patient is out of bed and standing up in the middle of the room. Miraculously, the patient is able to walk with zero assistance when they had so much difficulty with any assistance over the previous 2 days. At that point, they were enraged we went into the room without knocking. They were discharged home after a conversation regarding abuse of medical services. Had a patient when I was an intern feigning blindness. She would constantly be playing on her smartphone, only furiously trying to hide it when someone from the care team came into her room. The best was when my attending one day strolled past her room and threw his hand up in a highly exaggerated hello wave. She started to throw her arm up but caught herself halfway through, then threw her hand back into her lap and pretended to be staring off into nothing. I would never have expected pretending to be blind to be such a commonly faked issue, but reading this thread has changed my mind on that. Yeah, it's sort of opened my eyes quite a bit actually to how many people fake illnesses. Crazy stuff. Well, anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you are new here because I do these videos every single day.